Ja, hallo und herzlich willkommen zurück bei Detroit Become Human. Wahrscheinlich zum letzten Mal im Extras-Bereich bei den Videos sind uns hier noch 3 Stücke übrig geblieben, von denen ich aber nur raten kann, dass die gut zusammenpassen. Ich habe sie ja vorher nicht gekauft und noch nicht gesehen. Und zwar Entdecke Detroit, die Entstehung von Detroit und der Soundtrack von Detroit, der das Ganze dann hier abrunden wird. Ja, und wir starten mit Entdecke Detroit, meine sehr verehrten Damen und Herren.
When David and Guillaume got back in touch about making Detroit, I wasn't terribly surprised they decided to make it because the fan response was so intense. So it makes sense that they would choose to do that after the enthusiasm. It was a challenge, and it was just an interesting thing to get my head around how to approach this character now as a different, much older person, and whether or not she had changed. And I'm very happy to say that with Detroit, I've had the opportunity to see Kara grow so much more than I ever expected.
You do the housework, the washing, you cook the meals, and you take care of... God damn it, where the fuck's the rat gone now? Alice! Alice!
I mean, she starts out essentially how she does in Kara in a very, not robotic, but, android, other way. And getting to take this journey where she becomes more and more human as it goes on. And as an actor, that's a wonderful exploration in every way, whether it's how she sits, her posture, how her voice changes, how emotions change, and how much emotion is based on things like empathy and social experience. And so having, as much material as I got with David to have this huge, nuanced arc was really incredible.
Why couldn't we just be happy?
This experience has been quite different than the experiences I've had shooting film or TV or doing theater work. I have 83 dots on my face and a really, really flattering black wetsuit type thing. And you're jumping around with props, and it's kind of like being a 10-year-old imaginative kid, which is fun. There's 80 cameras around us. It's already lit. So we just shoot and shoot and shoot and shoot and shoot.
There's no change of sets, there's no hair and makeup, there's no wardrobe, so we move really fast, and we'll go through about 35 pages in a day. Working in TV or film, we'll probably do 6 pages a day. It's kind of acting boot camp.
It's like working out constantly. I mean, you're doing this thing, and then you got to do something that's completely other back to back to back. And so that kind of process of working is very challenging, but it's also very exciting because you just have to keep coming up with new ideas, and your head goes all over the place because you're trying to keep track of basically 4 different storylines for each different response.
You shot that girl, for fuck's sake.
It was a machine that looked like a girl. Yeah, I know what I should have done. I just told you I couldn't. All right, I'm sorry. The fact that David Cade, he's telling many stories interwoven from beginning to end is super complicated and super impressive, and I have no idea how he keeps it all in his head.
He's not just the writer or the director who's seeing this from the outside eye, he's also thinking about the player walking through this space. Only somebody who really, really loves not the work, but these characters and these stories and cares about doing something meaningful would invest that much in it. And it's always inspiring to work with somebody who cares that much.
My experience with motion capture is this one. And I found it sort of terrifying in a way because they said the computer's going to build you. But then as we got into it, I realized all the elements of it were still artistic. I just dipped into a really brilliant setup here. I've never seen anything like it. And this won't turn me into a product because I was playing a character. So it's wonderful.
In the game, Detroit comes back because of a revolutionary industrial rebirth. And there's no reason why that can't happen in Detroit, because they have such tremendous infrastructure for millions and millions of people who can very easily support, a new industry.
The city is really strong and resilient, but the city has also been through so much. You see the damage. But it takes that time of rebuilding and reinvesting into the city that I think is happening slowly but surely.
The potential of Detroit as a city is something that this game does a lot of justice to, because it would be easy to look at Detroit as some place that used to be and that's not the case.
This game provokes a lot of conversation and reflection on our potential near future engagement with machines.
That's what we are to them. Just merchandise on display in a shop window.
I think that a group that feels marginalized, feels like they deserve and have earned access to themselves and the environment around them, and are trying to figure out a way to articulate how to get freedom.
What was I designed to be? Their slave? Their toy?
It plays with your comfort levels. You think that this is fine, you're comfortable with it, until something blurs the line and throws you off, and now, do I feel differently about whether this should be allowed? Should it be banned? Should it be encouraged?
You're gonna ruin our lives, and for what? For a bunch of machines?
They are not machines! They are alive!
I'm alive! You're alive! They're nothing!
There are lots of comparable comparisons to any type of persecution of religion, race, etc., dating way back. It can't just be a video game where you shoot them up or where people make these choices to do whatever. I think that's the whole point. You have the choice, and you can either choose to go in one direction with your character or another. And I think that's going to be very telling about the gamer. Very telling.
I think there's going to be a really strong reaction to this game, which has such a strong perspective. I'm that much more proud of it now to get to be a part of it because it's important.
In this game, you're actively building and designing the character through not just what kind of shield does he have or what color hair does she have, but like their temperament and the way they deal with problems. The different endings to this game are so radically different based off maybe seemingly insignificant choices in the moment, but like life, they all add up. And can't play life again, though.
Ja, auch ein sehr interessantes Video. Ich denke mal, über das Thema Motion Capturing und Qualität des Spiels und so weiter haben wir jetzt schon hinreichend gesprochen. Schön, dass hier auch noch mal ein paar andere Charaktere des Spiels zu Wort gekommen sind. Ich habe so Sachen mitgenommen, ja, man musste viel Vorstellungskraft mitbringen. Es war teilweise Akkordarbeit, viel mehr weil, als bei anderen Serien oder Filmen, weil es keinen Szenenwechsel gab. Man musste sich schnell zwischen verschiedenen Situationen umstellen, aber dass es trotzdem noch ein hohes schauspielerisches Talent erfordert hat. Ja, vielleicht sogar mehr als in anderen Filmen oder Serien, wo man sich die ganze Umgebung nicht vorstellen muss und nicht mit bunten Löffeln von bunten Tellern irgendwas Imaginäres zu sich nimmt, was gar nicht da ist. Das fand ich ganz interessant und ja, wie sich dann auch die Schauspieler nach und nach ja noch besser mit Detroit Become Human identifizieren konnten und aufgrund der ganzen, der Entscheidungsfreiheit und der Möglichkeiten und der Themen, die uns wirklich vielleicht in Zukunft beschäftigen werden, auch ein bisschen stolz darauf sind, dass sie an diesem Projekt teilnehmen durften. Ich glaube, das wäre ich auch, wenn ich hätte mitmachen dürfen. Aber ich bin lange nicht so ein guter Schauspieler. Zumindest nicht in dem Bezug. Gut, machen wir weiter mit die Entstehung von Detroit.
Detroit Become Human was produced over a period of 4 years. Here in Paris, we have a team of about 180 people. And to that, we need to add also all the outsourcing with our partners in the Philippines, in China, Vietnam, and in India.
So when we started working on this story, I had to imagine where Kara was built. And for whatever reason, the city of Detroit came very quickly to my mind because it had already an incredible story by itself of history and themes. So we traveled there with the team and we were really moved by what we saw, and we could really feel the desire to fight and really be born again. And we just continued this curve, this growth, and just imagine what Detroit would be like if the Android industry was, using these huge factories to build androids there.
A very strong element in Detroit is that there's a lot of industrial wasteland and a lot of nature too. And for us, the graphic designers, it was an incredible playground. The destroyed zones which we wanted to preserve, we appropriated them to turn into something else. Then in the areas that needed to be rebuilt, we were able to imagine our Detroit of the future. We didn't want to make a science fiction universe, but a world of anticipation. If we chose science fiction, we could have imagined flying cars, extraterrestrials, but those things are very far from our current everyday life. Anticipation is more about gleaning from our contemporary reality, the one we know, because Detroit is set in 2038, and 2038 is tomorrow. The difficulty we had was sticking to reality. That is to say, technology becoming more and more invisible, a lot more elegant, and at the same time, making it visual. So all the computer equipment, autonomous cars, we simply had to invent. They are in fact very technological objects, but at the same time remain very credible and ingrained in reality. To create a cohesive universe in the fashion and clothing of the human characters in 2038, I didn't want to put an accent on strange shapes, or really vibrant colors, and things we wouldn't know. That I wanted to keep for the androids. The goal was to create something familiar which we can identify with in this future setting. Working on the artistic direction for the androids was a bit special because this is a project about the place they could occupy in the human world. It was out of the question for them to be too beautiful or too perfect. They had to correspond to every social class, rich and poor. Inspired by everyday utilitarian clothes, I brought a modern touch by adding dynamic display surfaces, the armband we can see on the side, the triangle on the front and back, an LED. Like that, there's no confusion.
Wait. You're sending an android?
All right, ma'am. We need to go.
You can't do that. Why aren't you sending a real person?
Once we cast the actors, we travel to meet them in order to scan their faces. We record the structure of their face with the scan. And we record the colors and patches of skin with photography. Once we have this information, we will use this as a basis for modeling and creating the characters. The artist will make it more realistic, but will also enrich it. He will propose ideas which we will develop together. Finally, we will have a character with character who corresponds to the project in the world. When the actors come to Quantic Dream, we show them the design, what their image will be, and what they will look like in the game. This extra information gives them another dimension and color to connect with emotionally. It helps them think about how to play their character.
Your mission. That's all you care about, huh?
You should consult a professional who can help you.
Beat it, you hear me? Get the hell out of here!
So there are 3 types of shoots at Quantic Dream. Shooting and performance capture, where you capture the whole actor, his voice, his face, and his body. These shoots are obviously done with American actors because the game's original version is in American English. After that, there are the body-only shoots, representing around 250 days of filming, while the performance capture is 100 days of filming. Now, body-only shoots, there are 2 types. There are the action shoots and the technical shoots, which are mokit shoots. Mokit is when the player controls a character on the screen, and he moves in an environment to explore it. This is of particular importance at Quantic Dream, and therefore we shoot a lot to offer a unique context for each scene and each character.
To prepare a motion capture shoot, we first get together to look at the sets we need, the animations that we want to shoot, which ones need to be grouped together, or which ones need to be cut and shot at another time, so that we get the most out of the shooting day. This often means shooting scenes out of order, especially those with big props or accessories, like a big car, for example. So we shoot all the animations related to that particular prop first. The biggest challenge for the mocap team was shooting a Spider-Man mokit. We had to build a wall and attach an actor to a harness with cables so we could pull him up and render him climbing.
The shooting on this game total took about, I would say, more than a year, maybe 1 and 2 years, with about 300 actors on set, so it's quite a massive production. But so much happened on this set, between the stunts and the shootings with a little girl and all these great actors that we had. It was really a very, very memorable journey for the team and for myself.
Today, Detroit has over 37,000 animations. When we retrieve the motion capture data, it's just a cloud of points, which represent all the markers worn by the actors. From this cloud of points, we have a phase called retargeting, which gives us a skeleton. This skeleton will be applied to the characters of the game. There is still work to be done, but this gives us the main movements. Since we are working on something very realistic, we must recognize the actor and also recover all the emotion he expresses in his performance. We use a system of facts, an identity card for each actor. We make the actor do a whole range of facial expressions. Then we recover all the expressions and paste the animations on a puppet that Jan has prepared. I then recover and refine these poses. I might stretch the lip, reinflate a cheek, tiny details that make the finished product really capture the actor.
Because of the nature of our mocap system today, when we receive the animations, we're missing eye movements, and so the character has that dead look. He really has no eyes, so then it's a big part of the work for the animators to find the regard of the actor in relation to his position, in relation to the body, etc.
It was crazy when I saw the newest model for Kara, because they've been working on it, and this was the first time I literally jumped in my seat. It not only looked so much like me, it was the fact that it looked so lifelike. It wasn't that it looked just like it was a camera, it was something else, you know, but it looked alive. It's exciting, and it's kind of terrifying.
Game after game, we learned the rules of optics and filming, and our goal with Detroit Become Human was to have cameras that would actually emulate the optics of a real physical camera. So basically dealing with real-world imperfections was our main task, and just to make cameras look as real as we can.
Once the animations are shot and processed by the animation department, integrated and polished, we film them. That is to say, we really do a mise en scène, as in cinema. The real difficulty of our job is to know if these cameras are telling us something. Are they in the emotion of the scene? Do they describe exactly what the action must convey, what must be felt? The most important challenge for me was one of the final scenes where Marcus decides to start the revolution and go to the battlefield. Very quickly, we imagined this to be a huge sequence shot. We wanted the feeling of a cameraman running behind us while showing Marcus, the androids who help him, the person shooting at us, etc. Above all, it was necessary to say to oneself, this scene is very violent but does not glorify war. On the contrary, that war is something improbable and absurd. It was really a fun challenge.
The idea was to say we have 3 characters. We would like each of them to have a specific cinematography. We wanted Kara to be much more filmed with some kind of handheld camera, to have something very living, very breathing. For Connor, we wanted something very cold and very perfect. And for Marcus, we wanted something epic and spectacular. So it was about the filming, but it was also about the photography. So we worked with a director of photography to give each character a different lighting, different key colors. Each of them would have their own worlds. And finally, we worked with the composers, so they would create a specific sound for each character, so each would have his own world and his own style.
Ja, 4 Jahre, 180 Mitarbeiter, 300 Akteure und über 30.000 Animationen. Mehr gibt es da grundsätzlich nicht dazu zu sagen, außer eine Sache noch, weil ganz speziell in dem Video Kameraperspektiven angesprochen wurden, die zwar, finde ich auch, cineastisch ganz gut gepasst haben zu den einzelnen Szenen. Manchmal hätte ich mir aber in der Steuerung tatsächlich auch eine andere Kameraperspektive gewünscht oder mir gewünscht, ich hätte mich nochmal, wenn ich an einer bestimmten Stelle vorbei bin oder so, mich nochmal anders hätte drehen können. Das hat nicht ganz hundertprozentig immer im Spielfluss für mich gepasst, im Wesentlichen aber schon und sah natürlich immer, für den Zuschauer auf jeden Fall, granatenstark aus. Das mal gar keine Frage. Ja, zum guten Schluss in diesen Videos im Extras-Bereich von Detroit Become Human. Achso, was wir noch gesehen hatten, Casting 2010. Also hat der ganze Spaß angefangen. Ich weiß nicht, also wenn er dann wirklich 2014 fertig wurde, 4 Jahre, 14, 15, Würde ja passen, 2010 Casting, dann nochmal 5 Jahre bis zur PC-Version, ich denke mal, und dann nochmal 2 Jahre, bis der Jason Daxis gespielt hat. Also es dann zu seinem Höhepunkt geführt hat, mehr oder weniger. Kleines Späßchen. Gut, dann also nun der Soundtrack von Detroit, da kann ich schon mal vorweg schicken, den ich übrigens ganz toll und stets passend fand.
Pour la bande originale du jeu, on a essayé d'être
For the soundtrack of the game, we tried to be very close to what is done in film. We were constantly asking at each place in the game, why are we putting music here? What is it going to say? So we focused the music on bringing emotion, which is interactive and supports the character's arc.
I'm sorry, honey. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. You know I love you, don't you? You know I love you.
We make games that are very narrative. We're really into interactive drama, so the soundtrack also had to go in that direction, supporting the 3 characters' very different stories. We really wanted 3 colors, 3 musical sound identities, and from there, having 3 composers made sense, since the story of Kara, Marcus, and Connor are all completely different.
You recognize him? It's Carlos Ortiz.
For Connor, we wanted a soundtrack that could be very cold and very mechanical, very machine-esque somehow. For Kara, we wanted a soundtrack that would be very moving and emotional. It was about the quest for identity, but it was also a journey about love and empathy. And for Marcus, we wanted something epic, something that would really represent the grand aspect of his quest. And we were very fortunate to find 3 incredibly talented composers, and working with them has been a dream, honestly.
My name's Philip Shepherd, and I'm a composer and a cellist and a producer. And today we're at Abbey Road Studio One, which is my favourite studio in the world. And today we're recording the soundtrack for Kara from Become Human. So when I compose a big project, I often travel just to kind of get out, and get some fresh air and some inspiration. And I go hiking and traveling in Montana a lot. I had a log fire in the room that I was staying in, and the flames were kind of making absolutely direct music. And it became the basis for Kara's theme, and it sounds something like this. Now, over the top of that, I found a little theme that just seemed to fit over the top, which is taking Kara's name, Kara, and just using like a 2-syllable motif, and it sounds like this.
We're going to pull through this, Alice. As long as we're together, nothing can hurt us.
And all the time that's fitting over. So it kind of works in lots of levels. And in fact, every single theme in the score has one of those elements built into it, and it becomes sort of the DNA of every single tune. For me, writing this theme for Kara, I actually had to tap into what it feels like to be a father to daughters. I really had to tap into everything I feel about my daughters and thinking, well, if I had to write music for them and that sense of trying to protect them but also give them the freedom, that's totally where it came from. Because each composer has been given the sort of narrative responsibility for very different characters, I haven't had to sort of go into other styles. I can actually be very loyal to this particular character and sort of hopefully encapsulate her. But it means also I've suddenly become very connected to this character, and if for some reason it goes to game over early, I'm getting mortified. You know?
They're over there!
Starting a new project for me personally, it's always finding the right tone, finding the right color, I like to call it. For me, it's finding that right texture that actually sits against picture really well. One of the biggest things is I created custom instruments for Connor. I pulled out all my vintage synthesizers to be able to capture this robotic person, if you will. My approach to all of these custom instruments is that I hear the sound in my head. And either I could just come into the piano and just be like, all right, so I'm gonna just get on the computer and just create it. I rather be able to play these instruments physically.
Oh, that's nice. If you can do that. As soon as you see Connor the first time, there is a really interesting thematic idea that you hear, and that's just made out of a Moog synthesizer, but completely manipulated in multiple ways. And it's robotic. It has a little bit of an emotional to it. He's on his mission, so you feel that as well. So it just kind of gives you that cold, motionless, with a mission in hand that you kind of feel throughout the whole thing. Because the music evolved, one of the things that I was very weary and I was very kind of focused on was the way that the music has to evolve. So my idea behind it was that Connor is a singular android that could at any point become a deviant or could actually stay as an android. So I created a more or less an Connor theme, and then I was able to just manipulate it in different aspects of it.
Is everything okay, Lieutenant?
Chris was on patrol last night. He was attacked by a bunch of deviants.
I'm a human being writing for a robot. And throughout Connor's journey, he meets someone, he meets a partner. So how do you deal with a robot feeling? And I've met a partner that I'm gonna work with, or all of a sudden he sees a dead body. Does this robot have an imagination? Does this robot have a feeling? And if yes, how do you translate that into non-emotional music? So it basically at any point I was just like, I can't do this, and then I just do it.
Property was damaged and fires continue to rage in several major districts across the city.
Some people are asking, have androids become a threat to our security?
When I first started really digging in on Marcus, the one thing that I really tried to capture was the transformation process. You know, Marcus is this android that evolves over the course of the game and really goes from kind of figuring out that he's more than just an android. You know, he's starting to develop kind of a human soul in a way.
Try to imagine something that doesn't exist, something you've never seen. Now concentrate on how it makes you feel and let your hand drift across the canvas.
The other side of Marcus that I really latched onto was that he almost became a savior for a lot of the other androids in the game. So when I started developing the theme for Marcus, I really made it like a church hymn. I wanted it to be very simple. I wanted to make it a chordal melody. I really wanted to make it almost like a Bach hymn. The tough thing with that is it had to be recognizable. If I made it too complex from a harmonic standpoint, it would be hard, I think, for people to kind of pick it out and recognize it. It's very acoustic derived, but it's also been treated with a lot of effects and things to kind of put it into the space that I felt the sound should be in. It can be beautiful, it can be haunting, it can be extremely powerful from an action standpoint, and I'm really happy with the way it turned out. The music is there, but it's subliminal and it's emotional, and people are feeling it, and it's not distracting. And that's tricky with a game like this, where you have to have a lot of ins and outs like that, where the music kind of has to get in and out of these moments.
This is a war we're fighting with the humans. If we fail, they'll destroy us.
I think the game's been put together so well where I just wanted to make sure that I wasn't ruining the emotion. I gotta be honest, when we first started on this path, I said, oh man, this could be pretty messy, you know? I mean, it could feel disconnected, but I mean, it's amazing how they really guided us and got us to really kind of all be in the same world, but at the same time feeling completely different. So it's really gonna stand out and kind of be one of those games where people are really gonna notice the music and kind of how it was crafted and, you know, and all the hard work that went into being able to pull it off in a graceful way.
Ja, das ist schon interessant, dass hier für die drei Androiden-Hauptdarsteller Kara, Connor und Marcus jeweils ein individueller Komponist in die Verantwortung genommen worden ist und hier teilweise mit orchesterartigen Ensembles gearbeitet worden ist. Freilich, man merkt es in der Musik, man sieht es aber auch, wenn man sich das Video anguckt und sich die Soundtracks dazu anhört, dass doch noch viel am Computer erfolgt und nachbearbeitet wurde. Auch der Synthesizer da mehr als nur einmal zum Einsatz gekommen ist. Wichtig ist hier aber mal, denke ich, dass hier eine imposante und stimmige Soundkulisse zustande gekommen ist. Beeindruckt hat mich so ein bisschen der Komponist, der die Musik für Connor zu verantworten hat, weil er gesagt hat, ja, er macht als Mensch Musik für einen Androiden und ja, er ist so der kalte, roboterartige Typ jetzt im Vergleich zu den beiden anderen, wirklich der so seine Mission straight verfolgt, aber worauf ich hinaus will, bevor der alte Mann am Monitor wieder zu viel abschweift, ist wirklich zu sagen, dass er da Instrumente konstruiert hat und bestimmte Geräusche und Musiksequenzen, die man sonst im Synthesizer gemacht hätte, auch wirklich fühlen und selber auf dem Instrument spielen kann. Das fand ich schon recht beeindruckend. Gut, nun haben wir uns in mehreren Folgen fleißig durch die Videothek im Extras-Bereich gearbeitet. Mein Titelmädchen ist immer noch verschwunden, weil ich sie in die Freiheit entlassen habe. Vielleicht kommt sie irgendwann wieder. Mal sehen. Gut, wie gesagt, soweit zu den Videos aus dem Extras-Kapitel von Detroit Become Human. Finde ich schön, dass man hier auch so nach dem Hauptspielerlebnis nochmal so ein bisschen in die Hintergründe und weitere Details zum Spiel und zu den Charakteren eintauchen kann. Lasst mich auch gerne eure Meinung dazu wissen, wenn ihr mögt. Und bis hier bedanke ich mich recht herzlich für eure Aufmerksamkeit und sage bis zum nächsten Mal. Auf Wiedersehen.